Your Grace, the trial will be getting underway soon.
There are a lot of instruments used in the Game of Thrones soundtrack. Strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion. The show's composer, Ramin Djawadi, often used a new season to introduce or emphasise a new instrument, sometimes a unique one, like the didgeridoo for the Free Folk in the second season, and the organ during Cersei's Walk of Atonement in the fifth. By the time we get to the finale of the sixth, we've had almost 2 full seasons of dealing with the Sparrows, a religious movement hell-bent on punishing those who violate the faith of the Seven. The king's mother, Cersei, his wife, Marjorie, and her brother, Loras, have all been imprisoned and punished for their actions. And with the approval of the king, it is now time for Cersei to stand trial. Having spent 6 years getting to know the character, viewers are likely aware that she is not simply going to roll over and accept punishment, but the Sparrows have proven time and again that they are practically unstoppable, including against Cersei, in no small part due to their alliance with the king himself. In the last finale, we saw Cersei's Walk of Atonement, the punishment for her sins. How this finale is going to play out then is the source of much nervous anticipation. And so it begins, with the main players slowly and separately preparing for the day, a clever decision by director Miguel Sapochnik. And with no music, just the diegetic sound of a single bell slowly tolling, marking the trial's beginning. It's simple and straightforward, organised and rhythmic, and it's universal. Everyone can hear it, from the king to the high sparrow. There's no secret, no mystery. With the toll of the bell, the trial has begun. When the sept doors open and the crowds pull in, the non-diegetic music starts, and we hear something that we've never heard before in Game of Thrones. Piano. For 6 years, Ramin Djawadi had avoided using piano in the series. The showrunners felt it was too delicate an instrument for the stories of Westeros and Essos. What better instrument then, with its fast attack and long haunting decay, to use for Light of the Seven, the 10-minute track that opens the Season 6 finale, The Winds of Winter? What better way to keep the audience on their toes, and let them know that something is about to happen? With these first notes comes the track's first motif, a recurring musical phrase used to evoke a certain mood, recall a particular person or idea, or help to tell the audience what is happening. It's a melancholic and somber tune, an arpeggio based on broken C minor and F minor triads. The simplicity with which it opens almost evokes a sense of vulnerability, of tension and reflection, all of which seem incredibly appropriate considering the events that are about to unfold. Given the context of the scene too, it's a little eerie and unsettling, in part due to the echo of each note. We're in the calm before the storm, and something is building. All of the players are moving into position, the crowd is entering the sept. As the High Sparrow enters the sept, we're introduced to the second motif, played on the cello in the background as the first plays on piano. Several characters in Game of Thrones are granted their own leitmotifs. Daenerys Targaryen and Arya Stark got theirs as early as Season 1, Theon Greyjoy and Melisandre in Season 2, Ramsay Snow in Season 3, and so on. As later becomes clearer, this actually marks the first time that Cersei receives her own leitmotif. The decision to introduce this motif in C minor on cello is likely no accident. This is also the main key and lead instrument of the show's theme music, so consciously or subconsciously, viewers can get a sense of the importance of this motif, even if they don't necessarily know which character it belongs to yet. That idea of not knowing is important in this scene too. If the score had played The Rains of Castamere, the theme song of the Lannisters, viewers would immediately know that Cersei was the lead character in the scene, and the mystery at that point is over. The same might be said if it had played the themes of the Sparrows or the Tyrells. Instead, Ramin Djawadi created a new theme to keep us on our toes. For this scene, a rarity for the show, the music is the main character, and we don't discover until later that it actually belongs to Cersei. Once you have that information though, it gives the scene even more depth. The first time we hear the motif is in the sept, where Cersei is notably missing. The music spells this out, making it clear, once you know what it means, that her absence is a critical part of this scene, a conspicuous piece of evidence that things are about to go south wherever Cersei isn't. and the presence of her motif throughout the entire sequence, even in scenes and locations where she is absent, really emphasizes her role as the puppet master. She doesn't speak a word during the sequence, but her image and her music makes it clear that she's the main character, the one pulling the strings, establishing the events that are to come. That her motif is introduced in the background to the earlier one gives the impression that her behaviours are sneaking into the sept underneath all of the events that are taking place. It then takes centre stage, pushing the piano to become the accompaniment, just as those within the sept are ultimately the subordinates to her and her schemes. And before too long, it takes control of the piano too, just as Cersei takes back control of King's Landing. The scene soon cuts away to Grand Maester Pycelle, and we're introduced to the third motif. Every new motif a subtle escalation, an advancement in the scene and its events. While the previous motif belongs to Cersei, this one seems to belong to the Little Birds, the network of young spies who report to the Master of Whisperers, once Varys, now Qyburn. Primarily consisting of 3 small tenths, of which the upper note is on a high register, this motif is delicate and innocent. As critic Lily Loughborough described, it's a song worthy of the Little Birds, so small and innocuous they barely register, but working in perfect synchrony. And while the Little Birds aren't actually present on screen when the motif is introduced, the implication is that they are inextricably linked to Pycelle, and his fate is sealed, even if he, and the audience, don't know it yet. Then for 4 full minutes, we get no music, only the sounds of the trial. Loras confesses to his sins, agrees to join the faith militant, and has its symbol carved into his forehead. Yet the scene is almost as eerie without music as it is with it. Not just because of the sounds of Loras's mutilation and his pain, but also specifically because of the absence of the music. The music went away just as the episode focused on Loras's trial, just as the shots of Cersei, Tommen, and the Little Birds stopped appearing, almost as if specifically tied to them. It's almost like the music is warning viewers, through its own absence, that the other absences are important, that the main player in this scene, Cersei, is missing. Loras's trial and the carving of his forehead might seem important in the moment, but it's ultimately innocuous in the grand scheme of things, undeserving of music because it will eventually prove to be inconsequential once Cersei's plans are enacted. When the music does finally return, it's with the motif of the Little Birds, yet we don't see any of them. Instead, we see Cersei, the real puppet master of the Little Birds by proxy of Qyburn, and we also see the aftermath of Loras's trial as the last note rings out. Although we don't yet see it, the Little Birds have infiltrated the sept, and the music lets us know. Interestingly, when Margaery confronts the High Sparrow after Loras's mutilation, the music responds by bringing back the first motif.
I've kept my word.
As Loughborough puts it, it's becoming a hallmark of his complacency, his hypocrisy, and his doom. And when the High Sparrow sends the Faith Militant to escort Cersei to the Sept, and Lancel gets distracted by chasing down a Little Bird, their fate, their doom, is all but sealed. From this point on, the music really starts to move around and overlap. We see Pycelle lured into Qyburn's laboratory by one of the Little Birds, but not to the Little Bird's motif, but to Cersei's. Because this scene isn't about them, it's about her. They've lured him into her trap. It's not until Qyburn starts speaking that the Little Bird's motif starts to play, slow and delicate, as their important role in Cersei's trap falls into place off-screen. And with the brandishing of a knife, that role soon becomes clear, and the music lets us know. As more Little Birds enter the scene, so too do the vocals of 2 young boys representing them, and the motif that they're singing is just a distorted version of Cersei's motif. The Queen and the Little Birds are truly interconnected, and both the visuals and the audio make that clear. The fact that the vocals are sung by only 2 boys, rather than say a full choir, really adds to their eerie nature. It sounds more haunting, more personal. and it becomes creepier and more tense the longer it goes on, as the boys singing in unison split off, creating a half-step dissonance that feels jarring, foreboding, and mournful. As the closest knife is drawn, the intensity of the music increases. And here we get our fourth leitmotif. It shares a lot of similarities to the first motif, including similar notes, but this one really feels like it's signifying danger. The music so far has been interesting and occasionally poignant and eerie, but now it feels dangerous and chaotic, played atop shocking and violent scenes. Events are accelerating, and things are starting to build. And if the earlier vocals were just a distorted version of Cersei's motif, here they become Cersei's theme entirely, signifying her culpability in the events we see unfolding. After Pycelle is killed and Lancel is lured into the catacombs beneath the sept, the music eases off again, giving the scene a chance to unfold slowly. An intentional choice by Djawadi to build up anticipation. Then when the little bird stabs Lancel, the music responds, returning in a dramatic fashion. We hear the organ, which Djawadi chose partly because of its religious connection, but also because of its previous use in the show. It's already part of the language of the score. But what's important to consider is when it is previously used in the score, most notably during Cersei's Walk of Atonement and some scenes of her imprisonment. Once again, though viewers are likely not yet aware, all signs in the music point towards Cersei, and towards her revenge for her sufferings. It's also important to consider what music is actually being played on the organ. After some early dramatic notes, it transforms into the show's theme music. The theme music has been incorporated into the score several times throughout the series before, usually to signify something that is narratively important, like a character making a move that will ultimately help them in the titular Game of Thrones. It played during the Season 1 finale, when Daenerys becomes the Mother of Dragons, in Season 2 when Tywin's army pushes back Stannis at the Battle of the Blackwater, in the Season 3 finale when the freed slaves of Yunkai praise Daenerys as their mother, and so on. But those are all game-changing moments that have a dramatic impact on the trajectory of the narrative, and importantly, the fight for the Iron Throne. This is just a side character in the catacombs being stabbed by a child. What impact could it possibly have on the overall narrative and the fight for the throne? Before we have a chance to work that one out, the scene cuts back to the sept. But unlike when we started in the sept, the first motif, the melancholic somber arpeggio, is gone. Now we only get the second motif, Cersei's, repeating itself insistently, as those in the sept seem blissfully unaware what's happening below, with the sole exception of Margaery, who clues in with suspicion fairly quickly. Before she has a chance to work that one out, we cut back to the catacombs to find out what's so important. Eagle-eyed viewers might recognize the barrels lining the walls, some of which have stains of bright green liquid. Cersei's theme cuts out, as if this discovery alone has circumvented its need to stick around so prominently. And as Lancel crawls to a light at the end of the tunnel, we see, after a long absence, a shot of Cersei. Things are finally starting to fall into place. She still has not left the Red Keep, and Margaery knows it. As Lancel crawls, Margaery brings her concerns to the High Sparrow. The music makes no attempt to differentiate these scenes. They are bleeding into one another. As Loughborough puts it, nothing is soundproof. Margaery insists that everyone leave, and we hear Cersei's theme sneak through underneath it all. She's not physically present, but her presence is becoming increasingly obvious. As the camera slowly reveals what Lancel is crawling towards, we hear an eerie ostinato. Until it is revealed. Wildfire. Things are about to get chaotic unless Lancel can reach the candle in time, and the music reacts accordingly. And as he begins to crawl, the chaos only increases. More instruments, more tunes come in, including the reprisal of the danger motif, the same one that played during Pycelle's demise. As Margaery attempts to evacuate the sept, the music becomes frenzied. The motifs, the different tracks, start to become indistinguishable, blending together. Cersei's theme, the little bird's theme, the danger theme, none of them matter anymore. It's all chaos. The only one that we can really hear, the only one that truly matters, is the theme music. The trial isn't important, the people there aren't particularly important. Even the little bird's importance is only illusory, a pawn in the system. The only thing that really matters, the Game of Thrones. The music becomes wild, chaotic, not unlike the wildfire in the catacombs. Gone is the gentle piano that started the scene, the purity and the sanctity that the faith is meant to represent. There is only chaos, death, and destruction, and there's no timer to indicate when this bomb is going to go off. The music does it for us. And chaos ensues. And like the chime of bells that started this sequence, we get one final chime to end it, as the Mad Queen looks upon her work with pride. And just as quickly as the music built, it dissipates. And for the following scenes, the next 5.5 minutes, in which Cersei torments Septa Unella and Tommen jumps to his death, there is no music at all, just the diegetic sounds of Westeros. Cersei has silenced her enemies, and as an unintended consequence, she silenced her only living child as well, the only light, the only music left in her life. Towards the end of the episode, with nobody remaining in the line of succession, Cersei is crowned the queen. As with a lot of typical Cersei scenes throughout the series, the viewer might be expecting to hear the reigns of Castamere at this point, and they'd be right, but not without some resistance. As Loughborough describes, the cellos throb almost as if in pain while Cersei walks down the aisle. Eventually though, the Lannister theme breaks through, slow and somber though it may be. But after Qyburn announces Cersei's title, something different happens. Instead of the reigns of Castamere returning immediately, we hear something else. It's a new version of Light of the Seven, more specifically a broken down version of the first motif from the beginning of the song, the beginning of the episode, and no longer on the piano. We know now that Cersei was the victor. She was the main character in those scenes, so it's time to bring back the music and show the audience who it truly belongs to, but in a new light. The reigns of Castamere sneaks back in again, Cersei's familial power clashing with her new queenly status, as the crowd looks upon her, not with pride or happiness, but shock, sadness, and bewilderment. And as Cersei takes her seat on the Iron Throne, we hear the return of a familiar motif, though this time a little more somber and considered. It's the danger motif, the one that signifies trouble. We don't hear the song's second motif, the one associated with Cersei herself, because this isn't the Cersei we started the season or even the episode with. There's no carefully considered plan, no epic enemy-ending plot, no innocent people whose lives must be spared, just a mother of 3 dead children, and very little left to lose. As Cersei's brother and lover Jaime looks on, the reigns of Castamere comes back one last time, fighting with the Light of the Seven to become louder as they both reach a crescendo, akin to both the conflict within Cersei regarding her family and the throne, as well as the consistent conflict faced by the Lannister family because of the throne. And it's perhaps important to consider the lyrics to the Lannister song as it plays in this moment, because the High Sparrow, his Faith Militant, the Tyrells, Pycelle, Kevan and Lancel Lannister, they all like to talk rather insistently in the Game of Thrones, in their attempts to hinder or support, sometimes both, Cersei and her family, and their status and power. And so they spoke, but now the rains weep over their hall, and not a soul to hear.